review a 1980 film called Fade to Black. I think it is one of those horror movies from the 80s that people really don't remember. I get why. This is a movie that has a really, really great premise, but just falls short in execution, unfortunately. It was directed by a gentleman by the name of Vernon Zimmerman, who I'm honestly not very familiar with. And this movie is about a young man. I'll get to the gentleman who plays him. He is, one of those shy kind of guys who is obsessed with older films, kind of like these ones, as well as a lot of Westerns that I'll be honest, I'm not as familiar with. And he lives with his overbearing mother. He ends up kind of snapping one day and killing her, and then becoming increasingly more deranged and goes on a killing spree, which may or may not sound like another movie. Who's to say? Who's to say? And it actually does make reference to Psycho. It makes reference to quite a few of these movies. Dracula, Psycho. A movie that it is most referencing is something by the name of White Heat, which I'm completely unfamiliar with. I had to go on IMDb and read about it. I've never even heard of it. This gentleman is enamored with a young lady who looks like Marilyn Monroe, and it does reference a lot of Marilyn Monroe films. Also, I'm not very familiar with. I don't know if this film would hold up for younger audiences, as it does hinge on people kind of knowing those movies. I am a movie nerd. If I am not knowing these movies, I doubt the average person who is around my age and specifically younger would. I thought the effects are really great, but what really carried the movie for me was Dennis Christopher's portrayal of the main character. You might know him from the 1990s miniseries It. He played the adult version of Eddie Kaspbrak. He is a really good actor, and he's been in a lot more movies than I realized, actually. And his performance in this movie is actually pretty fantastic. Most of the acting he's done is doing in this film is really expression-based, and this dude just has the most hauntingly tragic expressions. There's a scene where he is dressed as Dracula, and he kills this young lady. And then, almost in a way that reminded me of Romero's 1977 film, Martin, he goes to drink her blood. And that's the only moment in the movie that I felt unsettled. It's not scary, it's just his reaction and his movements and the look in his eyes as he's doing this is really uncomfortable. Like, really uncomfortable. I think it was actually the best part of the movie. But as I said, while his performance carries the film, it ultimately really falls short in terms of carrying the premise. If you've watched Supernatural, episode 2 of season 4, Monster Movie, I think is actually very similar to this and does it in a way that's phenomenally better. I think this movie does have an unofficial remake in the 1996 film Cable Guy with Matthew Broderick and Jim Carrey in one of my favorite Jim Carrey performances. I think both of those kind of do a better job of doing what this movie is supposed to do. The evolution of horror movies is, I think, totally fascinating. You start off kind of with the Universal monster movies in the 30s and 40s, and then you get to the Hammer horror movies, which are really just remodeling the Universal movies, and that leads you into like the 60s slashers, beginning with like Psycho and Peeping Tom, and then that starts to be remodeled with Halloween in 1978. In 1988, in the 1980s rather, you really had this huge creative boom. And as I said, Fade to Black came out in 1980, and this is kind of at the precipice of when this creative boom is about to happen. And so you were starting to look at being new and inventive, but also paying homage to what came before. And I think this movie just was really close, but not quite got there. I would have liked it had they not relied on footage from older films, but as much as they did. And if they were going to do that, if they did it in a way that kind of maybe mirrored what the character was doing. There's a scene where he's dressing up like Dracula and he's putting the paint on, and honestly, it looks pretty good. And then he goes to watch Night of the Living Dead in a theater. it would have been better if he was watching Dracula as he put the Dracula makeup on, specifically a scene that would maybe be reminiscent of what would come later when he starts drinking the young lady's blood. As I said, they really referenced White Heat, and they would show what he was doing, and then they would show what he was imagining from the movie. But it would have been better had he just been watching the movie earlier, as they want to show you as this kid being so obsessed with movies, and he works, I think, with footage. It'd have been better if they maybe had him, working in a movie theater, watching these movies, and then later reenacting them. I think that would have been a more interesting way to show this premise. As I said, it does have an unofficial remake sort of in Cable Guy, but I do think this is something that could be remade again and done in a way that is better. I'm not an advocate generally for remakes, but when a movie has a good idea but just doesn't quite get there, I think that's when a remake should happen, and this is a prime example of when it should. That's kind of really all I had to say about Fade to Black. I think it's on Shudder or AMC right now if you're interested in watching it. If you like Dennis Christopherson and you're interested in his performance, I would say definitely. I'm not saying it's a good movie, but it's worth like a watch. If you're bored. Have a great day, and bye.